Resolute Square.
There was also maintained what was called an enemies list, which is rather extensive and continually being updated.
Democrats want Republicans dead.
Where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay?
The women with the least likelihood of getting pregnant are the ones most worried about having abortions.
On January 6th of 2021, you had tens of thousands of people peacefully protesting.
So, it's not a right-wing conspiracy theory. It's not QAnon. It's real.
I'm Rick Wilson, and this is The Enemies List. My guest today on The Enemies List is Nikki Fried, former Florida Commissioner of Agriculture and now the head of the Florida Democratic Party. She is putting the jumper cables, the paddles on the chest of the Florida Democratic Party and getting things moving again. I am thrilled to have her on the show today. We're going to talk for about a half an hour about what's going on in the third largest state in the country and to talk about how she is starting to turn the tide of a Democratic Party here that's been in a little bit behind the power curve. I think we could all admit for the last few cycles, and how it's working and what she needs to keep doing and where we're going to go from here, and the impact of Florida as a state where the Republicans have really put themselves in a position where the voters are starting to ask the question of, is this really what we asked for? So Nikki Fried, with that, welcome to the Enemies List. So you and I both have a pastime of kicking the living crap out of Ron DeSantis. So let's start with Ron today. I think America is seeing that what we've seen for a while now, and that he's not really very good at this, is he?
No, he's not good at this. He's not natural. Yeah, and so we've seen this here in Florida, and I saw it up close. For
Sure.
those who don't know, that as Commissioner of Agriculture, I sit on the cabinet. So it was Ron, it was Jimmy Petronis, Ashley Moody, and myself. So I had that front row seat to see who Ron is and how he interacts with people. He's awkward. He doesn't interact with people. There's no personality there. I think I counted on the 4 years that we were together, maybe twice that we made eye contact. And so, the rest of the country is starting to see what we've been saying and seeing here in the state of Florida. And it's, they're rejecting the policies and they're rejecting him.
I think that's right. And speaking of the policies, I mean, this state for a long time had a sort of, the Republicans were rising in dominance over the last 20 years or so, but there was also kind of a sort of go along to get along among both parties for a long time. Even, during Lawton Chiles and Bob Graham, and even during Jeb, there were bipartisan efforts. There were people who were able to work together across party lines, and that's really ended, hasn't it? I mean, this state has become very, very starkly divided because of the way the Republicans are governing.
Yeah, and that's what's been so heartbreaking. I was a government consultant for 10 plus years prior to running for office, and I've been a Democrat since I was 17 years old, but we were able to work with both sides of the aisle. We came together on issues that mattered to the people. And even when I was first elected, I mean, truth be told, Ron called me the night before inauguration. I've known Ashley Moody since we were in undergrad and law school together at the University of Florida, knew Jimmy Petronis, and really walked into 2018 saying, all right, this is an opportunity. All four of us were under the age of 50 years old, all had young families, and really saw that there was going to be an opportunity for us to show the rest of the nation, how to bring people together. And I never like to admit this, but I've never been so wrong in my entire life, because it just stopped. That maybe for the first few months, everybody kind of tried, but afterwards, the divisiveness and just the unwillingness to talk to each other. I've lost friends, which is just heartbreaking because that's not what this is supposed to be about. But the Republicans have been like, if you would dare talk to a Democrat, or if you dare work with a Democrat on a piece of legislation, or you don't completely sign up to Ron DeSantis's loyalty, you're in trouble. And we saw that even more so this last year when he vetoed and line item vetoes throughout that budget.
Yeah, I mean, he's the pettiness and the spitefulness in the vetoes this year. It really kind of spoke to, look, I think you and I can agree this entire legislative session in Florida this year was the Ron DeSantis presidential campaign coming together. Yeah. They did all these things. Walk us through some of the things that you found the most egregious in the play this year, of how the legislature really took a hard right turn off the cliff on all these cultural war issues.
Yeah, and that's what's been so frustrating because, look, I was born and raised here in Florida and down in Miami, as were my parents. And this state has always, for all intents and purposes, been libertarian. Mm-hmm. If you want to hang out in like Duval Street and you want to go to drag shows in Key West, no one bothered you. Right. You want to, throw beads in Gasparilla, no one bothered you. And if you want to go to Daytona 500, right. Daytona 500 in the 30A area, people just kind of found their people. Mm-hmm. And we left everybody else alone. But what Ron has really done is, and I know speaking, again, my dad is a diehard Republican and always taught me what the Republican Party used to stand for, which is less government, right. less taxes, less, mm-hmm. Less, oversight from government agencies, free market. And that's just not what the Republicans have been in Florida for years now, but even worse now with Ron. So this past session, the 6-week abortion ban, right. the ink wasn't even dried yet on the 15 weeks.
Right.
Huge right turn. I mean, it's an all-out ban. Most women don't know that they're pregnant at 6 weeks. Right. And then even if you happen to have gotten that sweet spot of 2 weeks, you got now 2 weeks to go find a doctor.
Two doctors in this bill.
Two doctors, right. Two doctors, and you still have a 24-hour waiting period. Mm-hmm. So that's just not possible. And 75% of Floridians didn't want this and didn't agree with it. Then you have the hard right turn on guns. 71% did not want permitless carry. And it's not just permitless carry, it's trainless carry. Right. Now anybody can go in, buy a gun, carry it anywhere, concealed anywhere you want, and never have shot it. I mean, you got to do more to get your driver's license than you do to be able to carry your firearm in a public space. Hard right turn there, considering that if you pulled assault weapons ban, it pulls over 60% in our state. Then everything to higher education. Again, as a past Gator, past student body president, past member of the Board of Trustees, the attacks on higher education, on our diversity and training is just irreprehensible. I mean, we know where diversity training came from originally. It was the corporations. Right. They wanted their employees to be diverse because that's who their clientele is. And that is out of line with who Floridians are. But here we are.
It is shocking the degree of, again, you go through the list of things. I know for a fact one of the people doing survey work, doing polling for Ron DeSantis, begged him on the 6-week ban. They were like, please don't do this. This is poison. And again, it is a weird thing to me, at least, where look, Jeb and Marco, people that you and I both know for a long time. Yes. Were they ambitious? Of course they were, but they still were working a lot of broader questions when they were governor or in leadership in the House or wherever. They weren't just trying to set up a presidential campaign. And I think that may be one of the things that is missing from a lot of people's assessment of what's happening here I don't know that Ron believes in all that much except power. I mean, I think he is a genuinely weird dude, but he and Casey are the most ambitious couple I have ever seen in this state. I mean, by an order of magnitude. And I've known a lot of ambitious people in this state.
Yeah. And I think that Casey actually wants this more than he does.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
You even see, how she reframes the conversation, how, everything goes through her. I mean, that's the things that we were hearing for the first couple of years is, people kept saying, who's close to Ron? Who's close to Ron? I said, unless it's a blessing by Casey, it doesn't happen. And I was hearing these stories the first couple of years that they didn't trust anybody, and they still don't. And they made staff actually every single day write huge reports that two of them would take home at the end of the night, read the reports on decisions that needed to be made in the administration, and they read them together and they decided them together. And so this is as much a Casey show as it is a Ron show, and you can just see the choreographed, that video from last week, the how they present themselves, what she wears, what he wears is all choreographed, which is also, I think, why Americans are rejecting it, because it's not authentic. It is make believe. Yeah. If I didn't think that he was in such a war with Disney, I would say that they helped create the orchestra here. But it's really it's really amazing to see how that they really have created this theater presentation to the nation, and people want authenticity. That's we love him, you hate him, whatever it is about Trump, but like he's still authentic in the wrong ways. But it's a thing. Right. Where Ron is just a fake.
Well, speaking of the war on Disney, that is still an ongoing sort of running gun battle right now with DeSantis and his people. They still are trying to play that game. Talk to folks a little bit about how that plays in Florida, because people from outside Florida, I don't even know that they truly get the scope of Disney's role in our state.
Disney, between Disney and agriculture, that's what built our state. I mean, that's just it. That's it. And the beaches. But the truth is, Disney is our largest employer in the state.
Yep.
Without Disney, there would be no Central Florida.
Correct.
And what has happened when people keep talking about the special district, and that they had all these special powers. First of all, in order to, per our Constitution, to get a special district, the people have to be voting for it. So the people at one point voted because it is actually a higher tax on the people that live there, because they are the ones who pay for all of the trash and fire and policing and the cleaning of the area. That is all done by Disney. And they also are responsible for cleaning all of the water and the hydration systems all in that community. And so if that all goes away, not only are you going to see a higher increase in taxes to everybody in those counties, but you're going to also start seeing a depletion of resources. And when you see a water system that is built around the infrastructure of Disney, you'll see a collapse even of access to free and clean water. It's a huge impact for no reason. And I think it's really important for people to understand what you'd be like, Disney shouldn't have crossed him. They put out a statement, a statement after the bill was passed and after the bill was signed, trying to protect the employees of their corporation.
Right.
That's it.
Yep. It wasn't some like culture war. Your kids are coming to here and it must be turned trans or anything like that. It was, hey, our gay employees work in the state. We'd like you to respect them, basically. And you're right. It's kind of and he just won't quit on it, which I find interesting, because one lesson in politics is if you're obsessed with something and you're a political person and it's starting to hurt you and your friends and your allies, maybe not be so obsessed. But so let's talk a little bit about where you're taking the Florida Democratic Party, what your plans are for the coming cycle, what your goals are, and where you see the hardest part of your job. Because I like to ask people that question, like, what's the hardest thing for you right now in this? Look, you got to eat the elephant from the ass first, as they used to say. But tell us where you're headed with the Florida Democratic Party.
When I took over, people kept saying, "What are you doing? You are jumping onto the Titanic after it hit the iceberg." That is not normally a sane thing to do. And I kept saying, "Well, there was lifeboats. There was lifeboats that came, that were on there, and so we're going the right direction." But and I've been very honest. I will never admit that Ron DeSantis won by 19 points. The Democrats lost by 19 points. And it has been an accumulation of decades of not doing the work on the infrastructure, not doing the voter registration, not doing the year-round engagement. When we lost the Dixiecrats and the Blue Dog Democrats, we didn't do enough to expand our base. We took for granted the Hispanic community, the Black community, even the Jewish community in some respects, and didn't put in the work. And it all kind of just, it was a perfect storm for November. And we had just historic losses up and down the ballot. First time since is since the 1800s that we don't have a statewide elected Democrat and a super minority in both chambers. So when I took over the gavel, I walked in, looked under the hood, and this won't surprise anybody in the state or this country, but there was nothing here. So I'm not only just rebuilding this party, I'm really building it from scratch. And so I really kind of looked at it from a multi-pronged approach. First of all, we had to get the communications shop up and running, both internal communications inside the party, but also external communications. One thing that I heard consistently in my 4 years, and when I was running for governor and when I ran for commissioner of agriculture and even beforehand, where are the Democrats? Where are the Democrats? You see so much space being given to the Republican leadership because they've got the microphone, but you didn't hear enough from us. So we are doing a lot more rapid response, a lot more being on offense, not always defense, punching harder. I don't know the last time a Democratic Party chair got themselves arrested. So I did that with pride. And while the charges are dropped and I can do it again, sometimes good trouble is necessary trouble.
That was good trouble.
But that really... But that really helped create the spark of energy here, which is what we needed, that energy on the base to get excited about participation. The second was an ongoing fundraising stream, because all these things are great, but if we can't support our candidates, can't support the ground game, we can't be successful. So we revamped that. The third prong is really the internal structure of the party. That's everything from the voter registration to how we coordinate with the party, with our national partners, with our local partners, with the candidates, with people on the grassroots, doing year-round organizing, doing the things that Democrats used to always be really great at that we just dropped the ball on. The hardest part right now is kind of, I think, a couple of different areas. One is Democrats like to eat our own.
Yes, you do.
And don't do a good enough job, building our bench and lifting each other up. So really trying to change that mentality that we have to be all one team, one dream, rowing in the same boat direction. And so that's really been a lot of struggle at the local level and coordination with the electeds, trying to make sure that everybody understands the moment that we are in, and that if we don't do it differently, we can't get out of this moment. And the other is the perception that we've been left off the table from the national donors and the state donors and getting them back. And that is me showing the rest of the country and our state that this is different, that I'm doing this differently, that I'm engaging different people differently, that we are that we're going to start, putting up those W's again on the board, but convincing our donors across the country they're coming. But they are still waiting for some proof of concept.
Right. And I think you said the most important thing in that very good explanation was that you have to build it up from scratch. And I think that might have been, one of the things that a lot of prior chairmen in the Florida Democratic Party, they were trying to sort of like duct tape the whole thing together and all these different, all this history back and forth with various people. So you mentioned one thing that is my personal obsession. I've seen Republican parties across the country really, really do this at scale, and it's voter registration. And talk to us a little bit about, what a lot of people don't know is that most voters in Florida are now not Republicans or Democrats; they're non-party affiliated. How are you going to persuade some of those people to come back to the Democratic Party? Because a lot of them are like disaffected Democrats. And what are you doing about recruitment for new Democratic voters? Because the state, while a lot of Republicans are moving here, a lot of people are moving here who are not Republicans as well.
Yep. And what some of the arguments that I make across the country about why Florida is not as red as people think it is. First of all, I was elected just 4 years ago, the first female ever elected commissioner of agriculture, not just in the state, but the entire Southeast. Winning after 20 plus years of only Republicans in this seat, that we have constitutional ballot initiatives that pass by 60, 70% that are all progressive, everything from cannabis to restoration of civil rights to minimum wage to protecting of the environment and class size. And so what has happened in the last few cycles is that Democrats have relied significantly on third parties to do voter registration for us. And they do a great work, and they are certainly able to get into areas where we haven't, and the party hasn't been strong enough to really kind of hold on to the voter registration. And so what happens is so many of our donors went to the third parties, didn't give money to the Democratic Party, but gave money to the third parties to voter registration. And unfortunately, they can't do partisan registration. They can't do partisan conversations. So that's why you're also seeing this huge uptick in NPAs, because they can't have those conversations. They know they don't want to be Republican, but they're not being persuaded to become Democrats. And so we are doing this differently. We have been asking every single county in our state, as well as every caucus, any one of our large statewide caucuses, to propose actual in the gritty, in the weeds plans for every single county and demographic. Where it is imperative to do voter registration. If you have an R+2 seat, let's focus on getting voter registration up in those seats to make them competitive again. If you have a smaller county that is legitimately red, then go after those NPAs to get them over to blue. And so every county is going to be different. And so we are bringing all of that in-house. We are going to be very metric focused, very goal focused on where we're needing to prioritize resources. And we have a 67 county plan. There is no area that is going to be unchecked. That's how I won in 2018 by losing by less in 13 counties. And that's how Democrats have to work. And unfortunately, too many of our national races come here, and statewide too, and they come here and they focus on the blue areas to turn out the blue. But unfortunately, that's not been a winning equation for our state for a very long time. You got to go to the rural areas, and you have to go to the red areas and have those conversations and persuade people to understand that it's the Democratic Party who has been delivering at the national level, who has been fighting back at the state level, and certainly been delivering at the local level as well.
You know, it's fascinating to me because the old model of Florida, back when I started in campaigns in Florida in 1988, the old model was you could roll up Broward, Dade, and Palm Beach counties for the Democrats, and you would have at that point roughly 40 to 45% of the total vote that would be cast statewide. It's really radically changed a lot, and there is a little bit of drift right now in South Florida. And, you know, I think your point is correct. You've got to work the whole state. You cannot just rely on a big sink of votes in Miami anymore among, you know, Democratic, African-American Democrats and Hispanic Democrats in Broward and Dade County. You can't, it's just not sufficient anymore. What are you guys thinking about in terms of the drift, particularly of Hispanic men away from the Democratic Party? And I know Cubans have always been a slightly different bird in that regard. But Puerto Rican men and other and Central American and South American, like Venezuelans, they have drifted a little towards the Republicans in the last couple of cycles. What are you guys thinking about how you approach that?
Yeah, and somebody who grew up in Miami, I understand the complexities of the Hispanic community, and I think that what Democrats have really done wrong, you know, is have lumped everybody together and said, this is how we talk to Hispanics. And that is just so incorrect. And even in the Cuban community, depending if they came over in the 60s versus, you know, coming over in the 80s and 90s and even up to within the last 10 years. And so what we are doing is a couple of things. First of all, we've got to focus on the Puerto Rican community because we haven't done that. We've just assumed that they're going to be Democrats.
Right.
And so we have, and I've said the same conversation to President Biden's team. I said, when you come here, there is a whole swap of Puerto Rican community members, especially those that came over after Hurricane Maria, that we haven't been spending any time and resources on.
Right.
The second is to go back to the Hispanic community in Miami, and the Cuban community and Venezuelan and Colombian. And because we have been unfairly categorized as socialists. Right. And there was no fight back in the 2018, a little bit 16, but 18 and 2020. And the Democrats said, no, we're not. And then left it there. That is not how you respond to accusations.
I got to tell you, I told the White House, or I told the campaign at one point, I said, listen, send Biden down to Miami, stand in the middle of the fucking Calle Ocho and say, Fidel Castro was a monster who should burn in hell. It's easy. It's free. Just do it. And they're kind of looking to hear that, and it's just, the socialism idea is so stupid when you play it out. I mean, Joe Biden, ironically, has been the best president for American capitalism in my lifetime in the last 3.5 years. It's like, it's ridiculous. Yep. But yeah, you're right. The socialism thing.
Right. and we didn't fight back on it. And so, you know, and I said, you know, my opening of my campaign in 2021 was "Yo soy capitalista," you know, and just, you know, to talk about things. You know, I owned my own small business. I'm an attorney for 21 years. You know, like this is such a ludicrous, you know. But anyhow, but we didn't do that. And now that DeSantis has gone so extreme and so overstepping in government, and you know, whether it is now the new immigration law, which is going to decimate, I don't think people truly understand, but is going to decimate our economy.
Yep.
And it is going to pull people from Hispanic families out of our state, even if 3 out of 4 family members are documented, because that fourth is not, they're all leaving.
Correct. You know,
and that is where we're seeing some changes in South Florida.
And people from out, again, as you mentioned, people from outside Florida think, oh, it's just tourism. Ag is our second biggest industry in the state, folks. I mean, look, my family is in ag in North Florida and in Central Florida in citrus. And my cousin who does the citrus part of the family, they can't get workers. He's like, if I don't solve this problem by the fall, when we start harvesting, we're going to lose it. I mean, and he's one of hundreds of these producers in the citrus industry that is just they're sucking air right now. They and you know, at $22 an hour, you can't even hire people to do it. You know, it's crazy how much damage this is doing.
I said for all years when I was Commissioner of Agriculture that, first of all, we've got 2 million people that work inside of agriculture. Close to 1 million are undocumented. Think about that. Close to 50% of a workforce is going to be gone. And I would probably imagine a good percentage of the other 50% are going to have to leave too, because they've got family members that are undocumented.
Right.
This is going to be horrific.
Yep.
And what's crazy is that I'm hearing that people in the construction business are calling agriculture, asking if they've got workers. I see a world that we're going to have to come back from and do a special session or change this next session, because you're going to see so many of Republican businesses screaming bloody murder. And they're going to have to move. They're going to have to move to the legislature.
I was with a lobbyist friend a couple of weeks ago who works with the home builders and works with developers. And this person on paper is a DeSantis loyalist of the first order. And he's like, my clients and my people are losing their minds. He said that this guy has done this again as part of his campaign, not to help the people of Florida, not to do something good for the people of Florida or to help the economy, but so he can go to Nevada and Arizona and Texas and run in a Republican primary and say, I'm tougher on people who want to come here to work than anybody else.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
All of this stuff that he's been working on for the last couple of years is all for the purposes of getting to that MAGA base, which the MAGA base is not leaving Donald Trump. Like, nope. they're not going anywhere. That they're not going. So you like if they want MAGA, they're going to stick with Donald. Like this is
why do you want diet Trump? You know, they want all the sugar, all the caffeine, all the fat. They want the whole thing. So, well, right. Nikki,
they want the show.
Yeah, of course. You know, somehow we've got 3 Republicans running for president from Florida, maybe 4 if Rick Scott gets in the race. There's a lot of weirdness in the water here, but Nikki Fried, you're doing a great job as the chairman of the Democratic Party of Florida. I wish you all the best. Because even as a former Republican, I want competition, and there should be 2 dynamic and effective parties in the state. And I think you've really made some great strides already. Look forward to having you back on the show as we get close to the election, because Florida will, of course, as always, our home state will always be the craziest center of gravity. Well, thank you so much again, Nikki. Tell people where they can find you on social media.
So I'm all over the place. Nikki Fried on Twitter. I also now have a thread. So go visit me on Thread as well. And yes. I'm basically on every social media platform. So come follow us, give some ideas, suggestions, and most importantly, if you're listening, not happy with Florida, come visit floridadems.org. we're making some moves here, and you'll be very impressed with the team that we're building.
All right. Very good. Thank you so much for coming on the enemies list today, Nikki, and we will talk to you again soon. Right now, there are a lot of folks who are phoning in the death threats and sending in the death threats to everyone in Jack Smith's world, people who are investigating Donald Trump in this classified documents case where he stole American national defense secrets and illegally and inappropriately, violating the Espionage Act, shared those documents with people who were not cleared to see them. Now, this is part of what MAGA world does, is the death threats. Believe me, for the last 8 years, I have spent a lot of my time getting death threats from idiots. 99.9% of them are just assholes on Twitter talking shit. But a few of them have had to deal with the FBI and law enforcement, etc., because they show up at your house once in a while. I can't imagine how much worse it is for a guy like Jack Smith and for the staff who are doing this investigation. But they are getting death threats. The people that are doing it are on the enemies list, but the people encouraging it are at the peak. And that's Trump himself and his entire sort of media apparatus to try to turn a legitimate investigation into something where the people conducting it are threatened and have their lives and their families threatened. It's an outrage. It's not what a civilized society does. It's not what a rule of law society does, but it is what authoritarians do. So for the people throwing out those threats right now, for the people that are pushing them to push out those threats right now, all of y'all are on the enemies list. Get your shit together. Thanks again for listening to the enemies list. If you have any comments, questions, or if there's someone you'd like to hear on the podcast, hit me up on Twitter at @TheRickWilson. Thanks again for the wonderful support you've shown the pod. We're growing fast. It really helps if you will share this with your friends, your family, and anyone else who, like us, is trying to save democracy. While you're at it, if you could rate and review the podcast, I would be very much appreciative. I know this is the sort of thing you've heard a billion times. Please rate, review, like, blah, blah, blah. But you need to do it. It really does help us a lot. We are slaves to the algorithm, my friends, and if you do this, it will help get the pod out further. Anyway, thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time, and remember, whatever you do, stay off the list.